My name is Dina Tosto, and today I will be reviewing hypothetical scenarios from the perspective of a school principal in relation to the Georgia Code of Ethics for Educators. To begin, I would like to go over the Code of Ethics for Educators as defined by the Georgia PSC or Professional Standards Commission under the section Code of Ethics. The Code of Ethics for Educators defines the professional behavior of educators in Georgia and serves as a guide to ethical conduct. The Georgia Professional Standards Commission has adopted standards that represent the conduct generally accepted by the education profession. The code defines unethical conduct, justifying disciplinary sanction, and provides guidance for protecting the health, safety, and general welfare of students and educators, and assuring the citizens of Georgia a degree of accountability within the profession. We will begin with scenario 1. In the current pandemic situation, there is considerable concern about students forgetting lessons they have learned and the possibility of gaps in their learning. Mrs. Jones, one of our 4th grade teachers, is particularly concerned about her students who are struggling learners. To help avoid this learning gap, she contacted the parents of her students and offered to help them in reading and mathematics. She designed a tutoring service that included a curriculum that students could follow for about an hour every day with activities and assignments that she would grade. The charge for this tutoring service was $10 per hour per student, and parents could pay her by cash, check, or credit card. She developed a nice brochure and sent it to all the parents on her of her students. She also put her brochure on her Facebook page. Now, I was surprised to hear about this when a parent called to ask how to register their child. Mrs. Jones' actions raised serious ethical concerns related to the Georgia Code of Ethics for Educators. Specifically, her tutoring service violates multiple standards. To begin, Standard 1, legal compliance. Educators are required to abide by federal, state, and local laws and statutes. Mrs. Jones charging parents for tutoring services without proper authorization or approval is a breach of this standard. Charging for services outside of the school system without appropriate authorization is considered unethical conduct. Additionally, she violated Standard 2, conduct with students. Mrs. Jones' actions may be considered inappropriate conduct with students. Offering paid tutoring service directly to her students' parents and promoting it on her Facebook page goes well beyond the bounds of a typical educator-student relationship. This conduct could be seen as a conflict of interest and raises concerns about the fairness and equal access to educational resources. Finally, Standard 6. Mrs. Jones' brochure and Facebook promotion may violate professional conduct expectations, but clearly violate Standard 6. An educator shall maintain integrity with students, colleagues, parents, patrons, and other businesses when accepting gifts, gratuities, favors, or additional compensation. Unethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, maintaining confidentiality and avoid engaging in activities that could compromise their professional integrity. Promoting a paid tutoring service directly to parents could be seen as an attempt to profit from her position as an educator. Tutoring students that are assigned to this educator for additional compensation, unless approved by the local Board of Education or governing board, should be reported and allow for an investigation. Now, given these violations, Mrs. Jones' actions should be reported to the Professional Standards Commission for investigation and potential disciplinary action. As her principal, I would suggest highly through this investigation and moving forward that Ms. Jones cease all tutoring opportunities for any student within our district. As an administrator, we need to address this situation promptly and ensure that Mrs. Jones is aware of the ethical implications of her actions, and we must furthermore abide by any considerations made by the Georgia Professional Standards Commission. Let's move to scenario 2. It is 1 week before the opening of our school year, and we are planning for our new teacher induction meetings. I've sent an email to Ms. Bennett, who I hired 2 months ago, reminding her of the dates and times of our meeting. She signed her contract and completed all of Human Resources paperwork, so we're all ready for her to take her place in the 1st grade classroom. Ms. Bennett replies, I will not be attending the new teacher meeting. A few weeks ago, I had a job offer from a school where I've always wanted to teach. It's my dream job. So I said yes, and I'll be teaching at that school. They offered me a contract at a higher salary, and so for lots of reasons, I just could not turn it down. I hope you'll have a great school year. In this scenario, Ms. Bennett's actions constitute a violation of Standard 9, professional conduct, according to the Georgia Code of Ethics for Educators. She failed to honor her signed contract for employment by resigning in a manner that does not meet the guidelines established by the Georgia Professional Standards Commission. As an educator, she's expected to abide by legal compliance standards, including honoring employment contracts with the school and school systems. Her decision to accept another job offer and not attend the new teacher meetings without proper notice violates these ethical standards. Now, given these violations, Ms. Bennett's acceptance of a more favorable job offer for her should be reported to the Professional Standards Commission for investigation and potential disciplinary action. As the school principal, I need to address this situation promptly and ensure that Ms. Bennett is well aware of the ethical implications of her actions on both schools and bodies of students. Pending guidance from the Professional Standards Commission or my school board, I would also like to get in contact with the principal that she accepted the job offer from and let her know of the report that was made to the Professional Standards Commission for breach of contract. We're going to move to scenario 3. We're working on the high school schedule and placing students in science classes. A female student in the 11th grade contacts me and asks not to be placed in the same class as a male student who's also in 11th grade. The student says she was sexually assaulted by the male student a year ago. She doesn't want to make a problem about this, and she hasn't told anyone. She just wants to make sure that the male student is in a different class section. In this scenario, multiple standards have been brought to consideration, but I'm going to start with Standard 8, required reports. An educator shall file with the Georgia Professional Standards Commission reports of a breach of one or more standards in the Code of Ethics, such as child abuse or any other required report. Unethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, sexual offense, any sexual exploitation of a minor, and any offense involving abuse of a child if the educator has reasonable cause to believe that that child has been abused. Let's go up to Standard 1, which is legal compliance. Educators are required to abide by federal, state, and local laws and statutes. Unethical conduct in this area includes any criminal offense involving moral turpitude, sexual offenses, or laws applicable in our profession. We are mandated reporters. Finally, Standard 2, conduct with students. An educator shall always maintain a professional relationship with all students, both in and outside the classroom. Unethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, we're going to focus on Section 4, permitting harassment or misconduct toward a student. The educator's primary responsibility is to protect the health, safety, and general welfare of students. Now, given the sensitive nature of this situation, the educator should take appropriate action to ensure the safety and well-being of both students. Considering these standards, the educator should report the incident to the appropriate authorities, such as school administration, the local school Title IX administrator, or the local board of education, pending district's guidance on that. The male student should be placed in a different class to prevent any potential harm to the female students. Now, it's essential that we handle this situation with care and confidentiality while prioritizing both student safety. The educator should also be aware of local policies and procedures for reporting unethical conduct. We'll move to scenario 4. Browsing through the local paper, we read that one of our teachers, Mr. Darcy, was arrested for possession and sale of drugs. In this scenario, Mr. Darcy's action would likely violate the Code of Ethics for Educators in Georgia. Now, while you might first assume Standard 3, alcohol or drugs, is the infraction, and let me read it for clarification. An educator shall refrain from the use of alcohol or illegal and unauthorized drugs during the course of professional practice. These violations of ethics are addressed when the educator is under the influence or actively using a mind-altering substance while serving in their supervisory role as an educator. I am going to say that Mr. Darcy was off work and not in a supervisory position when he was arrested for possession and sale of drugs because I was not aware as his principal. Therefore, we are not looking at standard 3, but instead we are looking at standard 1, legal compliance. An educator shall abide by federal, state, and local laws and statutes. Unethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, the commission or conviction of a felony or any crime involving moral turpitude, of any criminal offense involving the manufacturing, distribution, trafficking, sale, or possession of a controlled substance or marijuana as provided in Chapter 13 of Title 16. Now, since Mr. Darcy was arrested for possession and sale of drugs, his actions would fall under this category of unethical conduct. Now, the code aims to protect the health, safety, and welfare of students and educators, ensuring accountability within the educational profession. Given these violations, Mr. Darcy's possession and distribution of narcotics should be reported to the Professional Standards Commission for investigation and potential disciplinary action. As the principal, I would get guidance from my local school board as well as the Professional Standards Commission, but I would suggest a professional leave while the investigation takes place. As an administrator, you should address the situation promptly and ensure Mr. Darcy is well aware of the ethical implications of his actions and possible further consequences of his choices. So, pending the investigation outcome, HR may be forced to have Mr. Darcy removed from his position as an educator. Scenario 5. 2 of our teachers, who are also coaches for the basketball team, called in sick, and now I've assigned substitute teachers for their classes. But later that day, I was watching a video of March Madness basketball between 2 local universities, and I was surprised to see these 2 teachers in the stands cheering and having a great time. In this scenario, the teachers, who are also coaches for the basketball team, were attending a March Madness game, and they were supposed to be on sick leave. This would definitely violate Standard 4, honesty. An educator shall exemplify honesty and integrity in the course of professional practice. Unethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, falsifying, misrepresenting, or omitting. Their presence at the game could be seen as misrepresentation for leave, specifically found under Section 4, reasons for absences. While a clear violation of the Code of Ethics, this should be addressed with the 2 teachers separately. After a discussion of the ethical implications of their actions and written documentation of the incident and conversation, the school should re-enter their leave as personal leave and submit their documentation to their personnel file. I do not believe a report to the Georgia Professional Standards Commission is necessary on the first offense, but both educators will be informed that a repeat of this infraction will immediately be reported to the PSC with documentation from this occurrence. It's essential for educators to adhere to ethical guidelines and avoid situations that may compromise their professional conduct. Let's move to standards. Scenario 6. One of the teachers was being criticized by an angry parent. The parent said that the teacher is biased against her child and intentionally giving this child lower grades than the other students. Now, in frustration, the teacher showed the parent the grade book and showed the grades of every other student in the class. In this scenario, the teacher's actions by showing the parent the grade book to demonstrate other students' grades would likely be considered unethical, according to the Georgia Code of Ethics for Educators. Specifically, it violates Standard 7, confidential information. An educator shall comply with state and federal laws and state school board policies relating to the confidentiality of student and personal records, including standardized test materials and other information. Unethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, Section 1, sharing of confidential information concerning student, academic, and disciplinary records. By revealing other students' grades to the parent, the student breaches student privacy and confidentiality, which is considered inappropriate conduct. The teacher should have addressed the parent's concerns through the appropriate channels without compromising other students' privacy. Instead, this teacher violated ethical guidelines by sharing confidential information from her grade book. Now, given these violations, the teacher's breach of confidentiality of academic records for each and every one of her students should be reported to the Professional Standards Commission for investigation and potential disciplinary action. As an administrator and her principal, I will address the situation promptly and ensure that the teacher is well aware of the ethical implications of their actions. I will also have written documentation of this conversation and will adhere to the guidance of the PSC following their investigation. Scenario 7. 2 teachers were assigned by the school to attend the high school football game on Friday night. Now, before the game, they joined an after-school faculty happy hour and had a few drinks and a sandwich. When they were at the game, each of them smelled like alcohol. Now, according to the Georgia Code of Ethics for Educators, this situation would likely violate Standard 3, alcohol or drugs. An educator shall refrain from the use of alcohol or illegal and unauthorized drugs during the course of professional practice. These violations of ethics are addressed when the educator is under the influence or actively using a mind-altering substance while serving in their supervisory role as an educator. Specifically, if the teacher smelled of alcohol while at the game, it would be considered inappropriate conduct. Educators are expected to maintain professional behavior and ensure the safety and welfare of students under their care. Given these violations, the 2 teachers' potential use of alcohol while assigned to a game in their professional capacity should be reported to the Professional Standards Commission for investigation immediately and discuss potential disciplinary action that could occur. As an administrator, first, I will send both of these teachers home from the football game and advise them that they are being reported to the Professional Standards Commission for the potential use of alcohol while in their professional role. I would follow this up with a conversation Monday, and I would also choose, based on guidance from the PSC and the school board, to place these 2 teachers on professional leave pending the outcome of the investigation. This situation needs to be addressed promptly, and both teachers need to be well aware of the ethical implications of their actions and possible further consequences for their choices. Let's move to scenario 8. While proctoring a standardized test, one of our teachers took photos of the test with their cell phone and shared the test items with the department colleagues. One of the teacher's colleagues mentioned it to me. In this scenario, the teacher's actions would likely constitute a violation of the Code of Ethics for Educators in Georgia. Specifically, it falls under Standard 7, confidential information. An educator shall comply with state and federal laws and state school board policies related to the confidentiality of student and personnel records, standardized test materials, and other information. Unethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, we will focus on Section 3. Violation of confidentiality agreements related to standardized testing, including copying and teaching identified test items, publishing or distributing test items or answers, discussing test items, and violating local school board and state directions for the use of test and test items. Such actions undermine the integrity of standardized testing and breach confidentiality agreements designed to protect the fairness and validity of these assessments. If you encounter such behavior, it's essential to report it to the appropriate authorities for investigation and appropriate action. The colleague that mentioned this to me is not in breach of any ethical violations because it was immediately reported and thus followed her obligation or their obligation. As the principal, I would ensure that through the investigation, this teacher does not administer or proctor any additional assessments, and I would take the advisement of the Professional Standards Commission and or my local school board in determining if they need to be on a leave pending the outcome of the investigation. Let's move to scenario 9. The teacher who is collecting money for the Sunshine Fund put the money for the Sunshine Fund in her personal checking account. She's keeping careful records of how much money is in her bank account and how much is for the Sunshine Fund. This scenario described involves something we call commingling of funds. This is considered an ethics violation under Standard 5, Public Funds and Property. An educator entrusted with public funds and property shall honor that trust with the highest level of honesty, accuracy, and responsibility. Unethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, commingling public or school-related funds with personal funds or checking accounts, When an educator collects money for a specific purpose, in this scenario, the Sunshine Fund, and places it into their personal checking account, it breaches ethical standards. Educators should maintain separate accounts for school-related funds to ensure transparency and accountability. Now, given these violations, the Sunshine Committee's educators' breach of commingling funds, it needs to be reported to the Professional Standards Commission for investigation and potential disciplinary action. As her school principal, I need to address this situation promptly and ensure that the teacher is aware of the ethical implications of her actions. In addition, I will make sure that all Sunshine funds are withdrawn from her account and have the bookkeeper at our school create an account for the Sunshine funds. The bookkeeper, along with assistance from myself or one of our administrators, will do an audit on the checking account to ensure that all Sunshine funds that were deposited are accounted for before signing off on the verification of the new account. In addition, this teacher will no longer be allowed to collect any fund within our school until the investigation is complete through the Professional Standards Commission and a decision has been made. Finally, we move to scenario 10. A teacher failed to include the fact that he had been convicted of a felony shoplifting when he was in college. In this scenario, the teacher's failure to disclose their prior felony conviction for shoplifting would constitute an ethics violation under the Georgia Code of Ethics for Educators. Specifically, first, Standard 1, legal compliance. It requires educators to abide by federal, state, and local laws. Unethical conduct includes the commission or conviction of a felony or of any crime of moral turpitude. Since shoplifting is a criminal offense, the teacher's omission would fall within this category. It's essential for educators to uphold ethical standards and maintain transparency regarding their past convictions. Now, because I mentioned omission, this is also a violation of Standard 4, honesty. An educator shall exemplify honesty and integrity in the course of professional practice. Unethical conduct includes, but is not limited to, falsifying, misrepresenting, or omitting under Section 1, professional qualifications, criminal history, and employment history. Now, given these violations, the teacher's omission of criminal history, I would be forced to report it to the Professional Standards Commission for an investigation and potential disciplinary action. As the principal, I will address the situation both personally and promptly to show the teacher the implications of choosing to omit their personal history, and I will adhere to the findings of the investigation. As the principal, I have to make sure that until the PSC has come to a decision in any of these scenarios, that the teacher is removed from any situation that can cause potential future harm. And I will always abide by those recommendations and suggestions of the Georgia Professional Standards Commission. For more information on Georgia's Code of Ethics for Educators, please visit www.gapsc.com/ethics. You can also find a collection of resources on this slide. There are PDF files, and we'll give you more information on your role as a leader in relation to the Georgia Code of Ethics for Educators. I want to thank you all so much, and I hope you have a good one. Take care.